This is Truth TOK. We are truth-oriented knights out for the promotion of meaningful discussions to foster democracy. At Truth TOK, we believe the false argument supersedes the argument of force. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to another episode of the show Truth TOK. This is your destination for meaningful discussions to foster democracy. And today is a special day. We have our first guest on the show. We're going to be introducing him in a bit. But just to say that this show is that which welcomes all ideas for the purpose of debate and for the purpose of progressing. After these debates, we find common grounds and we advance from there. We have on the show today Nkem Njinkeng. He is the Chief of Staff of the AGovC, that's the Ambazonian Governing Council. And we are going to be having an interactive session today. We are going to be having some sort of a debate session today to understand his perspective, where he's coming from. And the topic of today's discussion is Ambazonia versus La République du Cameroun. Who is winning the war? We want to understand who is winning the war. Without so much introduction, and let's dive right in. I will not start from the question itself. I want to go a little bit personal before I go to the AGovC, tackle the AGovC. I'll go a little bit personal, Nkem Njinkeng. When was that point, or where was that point where you realized that the Cameroon dream is not the dream to be pursued, and then you had to switch lanes to an Ambazonian dream? I don't want to think that you were born with an Ambazonian initiative or idea. It must have come at a certain point. When was that point?
First of all, thank you for welcoming me to your platform. Again, thanks for the invitation. My apologies to your audience that have been waiting for too long for this interaction to take place. As said, my name is Nkem Njinkeng. I'm a traditional notable from Libialem. I am the Chief of Staff to Dr. Choayaba, the President of the Ambazonia Governing Council. And yeah, glad to be here with you.
Yes. And to the question, when was that point where you decided to put on the Ambazonian hat?
Good. If I was start thinking when I actually started thinking about Ambazonia, that is going to take me as far back as my days in the high school. So that is some time back in the 1992, 1993, during the All Anglophone conference that took place in Boya. Then I was just a club member of the Society of Journalism of GHS Mbengwi, where I schooled. And thereafter, I was supposed to represent the club at the All Anglophone conference and maybe come back with some report that I used to present in school as morning updates with the Society of Journalism of GHS Mbengwi. So I actually attended as a journalist, but of course, as a student journalist, but of course, I was picking a lot from there and started asking myself a lot of questions. Where did we go wrong? And some of those things are things that happen on our daily lives, where you are being treated on the road as a stranger within your own countries. And so when you begin asking some of these questions, then you come to realize that you're completely someone else, different from what you've been told you are.
The Ambazonian dream had already been born as far back as then, and the people were already pursuing that.
Oh yes, do not forget that Dr. Goji Dinka was already campaigning for the restoration of Ambazonia since 1984. When Paul Biya, through a presidential decree, decided to change the name of the country from United Republic to Republic of Cameroon, which was their name initially before the Union in 1961.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, we've had the backstory of how you got integrated into the Ambazonian struggle, and now leading the fight for restoration as a chief of staff of the Ambazonian Governing Council. Let's go into the topic proper. Ambazonia versus La République du Cameroun. 9 years of fighting, 9 years of depriving kids from going to school, 9 years of tremendous hardship. Is Ambazonia winning the war? Who is winning the war?
Okay, good. You should be able to know who is winning the war. It is clear who is winning the war. Before Cameroon started the war, it is a war declared on our people, and we didn't declare war on Cameroon. And before they even declared the war, they had said we were just 2 cubes of sugar that they were going to dissolve us within 2 weeks. We are still standing strong. We, when Paul Biya declared the war also after arriving at the Smalen airport, he declared the war on our people and promised he was going to put an end to it. Then we started with rubber guns. We moved from rubber guns to den guns. From den guns, we're armed today. So who do you think is winning the war?
Now,
Cameroon or Ambazonia?
Now, the way you present it makes people who are not in this, or people who have not had a very insightful look at this, as Ambazonia is winning the war. Now, I challenge you with the question of what are the stats that we have? How many people are gone today because of the war? How many Ambazonian citizens, if we are looking at calling it Ambazonia, some people would rather call it Southern Cameroons, or going as far back as putting it as Northwest and Southwest. Now, when we look at the stats, how many people have lost their lives in this war? If what's the stats the Ambazonian Governing Council has? Maybe on both sides, maybe on the civilian side and on the military side.
We do not know who is winning the war by counting the number of casualties. Now, Ambazonians have lost thousands of people. I mean, scores of thousands of people during this war massacred by the regime in Yaoundé. And so in a war of liberation, we do not expect to, it's not a conventional war that we're having with Cameroon. We're having a guerrilla warfare where we decide when to shoot. And so Cameroon, out of anger, is turning its weapon on our citizens. And we cannot guarantee the safety of the citizens of Ambazonia at this moment. But we go after the enemy, and we keep going after the enemy until the day they are going to leave our territory. That is winning the war. And so you cannot tell me today whether, or you cannot ask me the question whether who is winning the war, and I'll give you a clear answer. As long as Cameroon has not been able to completely stop Ambazonia from their quest for independence, then we are on track and winning the war. It is just a question of time, and that time is on our side. No matter the amount of people that are dying, liberation or freedom is only gotten after blood has been spilled. Unfortunately, that's what it is. And so we are not going to give up because we realize that so many of our people are being killed. Of course, we continue the pursuit for independence.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you present it in that manner, I would want to go to what we call terrorism. Now, it's a term that is being used by some people sometimes to give a dog a bad name, to kill it. But sometimes it's a proper term, and I think even the Ambazonian Governing Council recognizes the term and labels some group of people as terrorists. Now, it will be challenging to say, I find it not very reasonable to say the fact that we are still standing as combatants, or we still have combatants on the ground, means we are winning the war, because we have terrorist organizations, terrorist groups carrying out terrorist activities around the world or in some certain areas. They have been standing for decades and they are still standing. It doesn't necessarily mean they are winning a war against, the conventional state or the state army, but you would always have those pockets of resistance within a nation that's experiencing terrorism. A lot of people have regarded, say, the combatants, the people fighting for restoration, as terrorists, as a terrorist organization, and being led by terrorists, and the combatants themselves as terrorists. Is that the way? I mean, that's not the way you would look at it, but that's the perspective from a lot of people.
Who define them as terrorists? Now, I do not need an answer immediately. Of course, even Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. That same Nelson Mandela was being described by the West as a terrorist. The same West gave him the Nobel Peace Prize. And so we are not worried if, because our pursuit for freedom and independence for Amazonia is being described as act of terrorism. It is not. Our request from La République du Cameroun is that they abandon a fake union and should simply let Amazonian go. Now, they declared that war. We didn't declare war on Cameroon. Who is the terrorist? Cameroon or the Amazonians that are trying to defend themselves from being killed?
Now, the way I will pick up from there is, if the people asking for restoration of independence today didn't rise up and had this outrageous demand, as the La République du Cameroun will call it, we wouldn't have found ourselves here. We wouldn't have been counting thousands and thousands. I think by the AGovC stats, we should be having over 20,000 civilians who have been killed in this war of independence. If they didn't rise up, being pushed forward by, or being pushed by these groups abroad, people from abroad championing the people on the ground, if they didn't rise up, we wouldn't have had this number of casualties. We probably would have still been experiencing some relative peace. Sangabu was saying something.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, I guess, a question before we continue. I know it's something that we discussed about. I just wanted this question. It has been looming my mind since we started this debate. I wanted to know from him. I don't know how close he is with the Amazonian government and other people, but I would like to know what level of control. Can you give me, in terms of percentage, the level of control that the Amazonian government or the Amazonian Council has with the forces on the ground?
The AGovC has as the military on the ground, the ADF.
Yeah.
And they have control over the force called the ADF. In the struggle for the liberation of Amazonia, of course, you have independent forces that exist on the ground, and we cannot claim that we have control over them. We may have collaborated with them in some way or the other, help fund them also to make sure that they protect their community, but we cannot guarantee you that we control all forces on the ground. We must also acknowledge the fact that you have the Atanganji forces on the ground or something of that sort that also try to counter what we are doing and give us the bad name so that we should be called terrorists.
Now, back to the question I was asking before Sangabu came up with this. I was talking about the stats. Based on the stats from the AGovC, we have over 20,000 civilians have lost their lives. But we cannot say for a fact that we have, say, up to 5,000 military men who have been taken down by the forces or by the ADF or by all the ADF and sister forces. So that's why we boil down to the question of who is winning the war, how many soldiers or how many combatants has the ADF lost. I think these are communications that are proper if we want to do proper analysis of who is winning the war. The combatants.
That's not how you're going to find out who is winning the war. When you are finding out who is winning the war, it is not about counting how many people, how many civilians have died. It is about who actually in winning the war in terms of dismantling the military of Cameroon within our territory. What have we been doing to dismantle them, and not how many people, civilians, has been killed? While fighting, at the same time, we also bring to the attention of the international community the atrocities of Cameroon within Amazonia. And so the international community has a responsibility to make sure that they intervene and end Cameroon's atrocity in killing civilians and not soldiers.
And if we're talking about 9 years, almost a decade, the kids who were born when this whole thing started, I already say almost 10 years, and maybe can start thinking for themselves, maybe should have been at some level of education right now, and just thinking of getting a better future. But a lot of them are living in Bamenda now, and the future seems to be very oblique. The future seems to be very opaque, rather, and they're not sure if there's a tomorrow for them.
If we look at history, the independence of Eritrea didn't take 9 years, it took 30 years. There are also other liberation struggles that have taken above 20 years before they ever made it. And we are 9 years into a war and already have gone too far, more than what Eritrea had attained when they were 25 years into the war. So we think we are making good progress. And at the same time, as I said, it's not only about the war, we are also making sure that we also engage the diplomatic front and make sure that the international community can intervene as soon as possible and negotiate a way out of this war, because it is not a needed war. Cameroon declared that war for a purpose, and that purpose was to completely eliminate Amazonia. So it is an existential war.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. I'm trying to intervene because I would like to know the indicators that you have that prove to you that you have gone this far.
Come again, I didn't get that.
I would like to know the indicators that you are using to think that you have gone or you have achieved in 9 years what the others achieved in 25 years. Please list some of the indicators for us. Thanks.
Oh, we still have a stronghold within Bamenda. We still have a strong hold within Bui. And even when Cameroon thought things were returning to normalcy, the Atlantic state, ignited the fight again within the Atlantic state, and that's the indication that Cameroon is not winning. And the normalcy, they've been going around trying to preach that there's normalcy. There's no normalcy. We still keep going after their military that has been installed within our territories. A few days ago, we saw a civilian from the community of Mpondo, also Malende, one of them. They were in a march in protest of the atrocities of Cameroon within their community. This is what we want to put to an end. And if we do not put it to an end and trying to find some sort of peace, we are simply shifting it to another generation. And so this generation has decided that they're not going to shift it again to another generation, just like the Foncha and the Mfongalam for generation shifted it onto it got to our generation.
Now you mentioned the situation at Malende, which happened a few days ago, and this is just one of several marches, but this was one of those which favored the movement of restoration. How about the tens of other marches that were in favor of eliminating the Amazonian defense forces or the whole concept of Ambazonia. We've had
Cameroun instigated and intimidated civilians to come out and march against their own liberators.
Yeah, for example, we've had that in Pinin, if I'm not mistaken, just about a week or two ago, when they actually marched to the camp of these boys and took back some of the solar panels which the MTN was using, something of that nature. I can't string the story properly, but that's what actually happened. We had the civilians hailing the vigilante group, which had to take upon themselves to release some of the abducted civilians and to take back some of these solar panels. We saw this on video.
I have just explained to you, the state is instigating and intimidating the civilians to march against their own defenders. And do not forget, I mentioned earlier here about the Atanganji boys. That's their job that they've been doing in the name that they call the vigilante. These are people sponsored by Cameroun to destabilize, to try to intimidate the civilian so that they come out to say they are protesting against our people. But do we go intimidating our people to come out to protest in Malende? No. When people march in 2000, when people march in Boya,
don't you think that that's exactly what the Cameroon government is going to be saying, that you instigated, or the boys instigated the people to come out and march in favor of them?
The question is, don't you think that it's the same narrative the government is putting out there, that the boys in Malende have instigated the civilian population to go out there and march, so that it's shown out to the media or to the world that this is what is happening here?
That will mean Cameroon do no more have control within Ambazonia. Those are one of those indicators you were requesting for. That's already indicated that Cameroon is no more in control of the territory of Ambazonia, and have to use these boys to try to claim some sense of still being present.
Now we are slowly approaching to, for example, 20th May, and to indicate control over this region is to say that, okay, the Ambazonian Governing Council has called for a 3 days lockdown, and if the people actually are in favor of what's going on the ground, you'll see it respected massively. But on every occasion when we have these lockdowns called because there's supposed to be a march past, we still see this march past go on to a certain extent smooth and uninterrupted. I don't think that's an indicator which makes us think that Ambazonian fighters are winning the war.
But you also see on October 1st how our people come out to demonstrate, right? To celebrate the 1st October. And so Cameroon has its own stronghold. But the fact that we may just control only about 30% of the territory is already indicative that we are winning and we are approaching. The fact that we are not yet in control of Boya precisely, and other peripheral towns around Boya, is not indicative that we are losing the war. After all, Eritrea completely lost hold of the capital of Eritrea until the very last minute that they overtook it and the war came to an end. And so we are not bothered if activities are still ongoing within FACO and things like that. We know with time we're going to reach there.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your analysis. I would like to know, because when I look based on my own feeling and view of the crisis, I really do not see a particular place where I can totally say Ambazonians are in control. Please, can you highlight some of the places that you think you totally have control, like have 100% control over, even a village?
Of course, we do not have any territory that is 100% control over. But where we have that present, that we decide what is going to be there. Ghost Town still does not hold. Ghost Town still does not hold only in the Atlantic State. In the northern, in the Savannah State, the Ghost Town still takes place, right?
Yeah.
So to some level, we have control over Mezam, Momo, Bui, and we're entering Donga Mantu.
Okay. Now let's go into the AGovC a little bit deeper. The AGovC in particular, that's the Ambazonian Governing Council. Its force on the ground, or its combatants on the ground, are under the umbrella of the ADF, or represented as ADF, that's the Ambazonian Defense Forces. A lot of people out there think that the ADF is the problem. A lot of people out there think that there are a lot of harsh policies being implemented by the AGovC and in turn implemented by the ADF that are really putting the people in so much pain. What's your take on that? We might highlight some
policies. Which are those policies?
For example, let's look at the policy of changing taxi colors, and then you have taxi men who are barely struggling to have a meal or two for their households. You have their taxis seized. We have seen some taxis being burnt. Now, you might claim that maybe it's not the Ambazonian Defense Force doing that, but that's the policy that was put in place, and it had to be effected. And
point of correction, that was never the policy of the AGovC. Did you ever read anywhere that the AGovC said this was a policy from the AGovC? No. This was a policy generated by soldiers on the ground. And the AGovC simply said they were going to stand with them. So it was not a policy generated by the AGovC.
Even if it was not generated by the AGovC, we have seen that the AGovC pushed forward for this policy strongly, and also pushed forward for the policy of confiscating ID cards. Am I correct?
The ID cards has been banned ever since before war escalated in 2017.
So how do you expect people to go about the territory without ID cards?
In 2014, ID card issue of Cameroun within Ambazonia had already been banned. That was a policy of the AGovC. Agree.
Okay, so now
this thing was not only coming, this was simply implementation of those ID card banning. In Nigeria, ID card does not even exist.
The military or the police of Nigeria does not apprehend individuals because they are not holding an ID card, or they are not within reach of their ID card. They do not do that. But on the ground today, we have the military presence almost everywhere, and for people to be able to go about their normal activities, for people to be able to fend for themselves, they need to have this ID card on them so that they are not harassed.
I'm surprised that you prefer to talk about the ID cards and try to tell us that they cannot do their activities within the ID card. I would have wanted you to start with something like the plate numbers that was also banned, which is a policy of the AGovC, was also banned, and even Cameroon officials on arriving Martinson, they removed their plate number before entering Bamenda. So it is a sign of defiance. If everybody stops using the Cameroon national ID card, there is nothing Cameroon is going to do about it.
That's the challenge. You will not have that majority of people who would say, no, we are going to stop using the ID card. Rather, the majority, or 90% of the people, will still go on with their ID cards. They say it's better to be safe than sorry. People are trying to save their heads. That's all what people are trying to do at this moment. They just do not want a bullet to get through their head, or they just want to stay out of being from cell.
Our people must join in the defiance. That is why this war is taking longer. Our people must join in defiance. It is difficult, but we ask our people to stand with us and go through the difficult time and put this thing to an end. But if we keep saying we just want to buy our way out, then we keep dragging this war to last for decades.
Another thing that I would bring up will be the institution of the tax law. The tax law, which demands individuals to pay a certain amount of money to fund this war, a war that they did not call for, a war that maybe they do not support, but they are requested to pay a certain amount of money. Some of them are called arrested and taken to the bush. Some of them are tortured if they cannot pay this money. A whole lot of atrocities are linked to this because people are not able to get this money to pay. And then you have policies like ghost towns, which makes it impossible for people to even hustle on 6 days a week or 5 days a week to get this money. Our people are struggling to stay alive.
My take on it.
Yes.
The tax law is not meant to crumble our people. The tax law is aimed to arm those who are going to defend our people and bring an end to this war. They do not, before we implemented the tax law, the liberation tax, what we were trying to prevent are some of the realities that we discover why people were going around kidnapping civilians. And the intention was to put an end to kidnapping and find an alternative in funding the war. Soldiers are in the bushes, they fight and remain in the bushes 7 days in a week, the whole year round, for 8 years today, and do not even have what to eat. And so sometimes we try to show an understanding that maybe they go around kidnapping people because they do not have sufficient to eat. And so we decide, okay, every male civilian is going to contribute a 5,000 francs in a year. Or is it 10,000? 10,000 in a year to support the struggle so that this boy can have something to feed on and equip themselves. And we say no. And we are giving the same money to Cameroun every day. They arrest you every day, you give them a 50,000 francs. Your own soldiers who want to defend you, they ask you a 10,000 francs in the year. You complain about it. But you go around giving it to Cameroun, continue encouraging them to stay within your territory and extort from your people. The Malende people protest, as you must have seen on social media, people were protesting that whatever thing they bring from their farm, they pay tax on. I'm surprised Ambazonians are not saying anything about it. But they rush to say, oh, there was a liberation tax that they're asking 10,000 in a year to help equip the soldiers to protect them. Are we real?
I have a question. So, talking about supporting maybe annually, do residents of Ambazonia have the option to say, okay, no, I'm not going to support and go away with all their limbs?
Every Ambazonian has an obligation to support. It is a civic responsibility that every Ambazonian must support the cause for liberation. Our own is not different. Our own is not different. Our own is not different. In Eritrea, people cannot still enter Eritrea today because they refuse to make their contribution during the liberation war. Our own is not going to be different. We want we want a situation where we keep romancing with the enemy and refuse to fund our own war of liberation and have a total liberation and stop suffering. That
would be true. That would be true. There are certain things that we need to understand. If there is, first of all, the people recognize you as a legitimate arm of government or that they put you in place to fight for them. But
the AGovC is not a government. The AGovC is a liberation movement. And when we introduce the liberation tax, we reach out to other movements within the liberation struggle to take into consideration and implement the same tax, liberation tax. And then we were going to find way how this liberation tax will be collected for all forces on the ground. And not only the ADF forces have been collecting taxes on the ground, independent forces have been doing that as well. They've requested for the booklet to be also collecting taxes.
Now we're going to come to that. We're going to come to that to the aspect of collaboration, but I'll let Kwakwa continue with his questions.
Yes.
So why I'm asking this is because we're talking about we're fighting against a regime that has maybe marginalized, oppressed, and tortured people from English-speaking Cameroon. Then we turn around and we say it is an obligation. They, on the other side, across the Mungo, we use the same statement as it is an obligation. What gives the fighters of Ambazonia liberation that they have a legitimate claim to say, okay, you have an obligation to support. The people have a right to say, okay, I'm not in support of this particular struggle. I will not pay this tax or whatever. Because what we say is like everybody's in support. The people in that region who are not in support of the whole crisis, they are okay where they were under the Republic. So if you say that, okay, you have an obligation, you must contribute. That's what the problem is, because to me, I see it as offensive and oppressive, because I had an experience where somebody said he did not have money, not that he refused to pay. And what was done to that person, I don't want to even explain. And from testimony, if you are going towards Oku, there's a control there. When they come in that control, they just say, men, 10K, women, 5,000. They're not debating with you whether you pay or not. If you don't pay, they're taking you away from the car. So when it comes to this kind of sector, people have been under lockdown, struggling, like Mr. Victor mentioned, and people are in a crisis situation where there's no money, and you impose a tax that it is a must that you must pay without considering the situation of people. Isn't that oppressive?
You see, I don't know why you try to compare a people that a war has been declared upon them with Cameroun, an institution that do exist. We are not in normalcy, we are in war. And during war, laws will be put in place that may not really favor the civilians. But as I said, we have a civic responsibility to make sure that we put the barbarism of Cameroun to an end. Now, I'm not just saying that we are angels and so everything that we are doing is are perfect. There are excesses of soldiers on the ground. Some soldiers might have gone around for one reason or the other, demand from civilians more than what it is required, like the case you are trying to indicate from Oku or something of that sort. But we don't send people out to go out and be intimidating civilians to extort money from them against their wish. All they ask is every Ambazonian should be able to make a 10,000 francs contribution to the liberation struggle per year. And so if some people go around requesting that each time they are crossing Oku, it is not in accordance with the organization. Those excesses also, we cannot stop them altogether. We are in a war, remember?
Now, true. What you are saying is we are in a war, is true, and nobody can argue that. Now, I'm a citizen of Ambazonia, and I have the forces of the Republic on one side, and I have the Ambazonian fighters who say they're fighting for my liberation and my freedom on another side. But when I stand in the middle and look at both parties, I don't really feel I don't feel that comfort to say, okay, I can trust A or B. In terms of a crisis, I don't even think I can run to A or B, because I have seen what they have done, the atrocities both parties have committed. Now, we are in war, as we have said, but I mean, the people should be able to say, okay, with a certain level of confidence and certainty that, okay, these persons who say they're fighting for me are actually fighting for my own good. I don't think if it gets to a point where people have to vote now, people will come out and say confidently that 100% that we will be safer in the hands of the fighters than in the hands of the Republic when the atrocious acts are on both sides. So when it's like we're giving room for people to just do what they want because okay,
when the war started, our people were very confident with forces on the ground. But because of infiltration atrocities that have been committed, our people get confused who exactly the enemy is. And so you may not just think that someone that comes from the bush with a gun and say, I am Amba soldier, is an Amba soldier. There are a lot of them that are infiltrated soldiers or fighters.
So we have 9 years. We've had 9 years of this war, and we still talk about infiltration. I mean, we need to put in a system where we can differentiate and distinguish between the infiltrators and the legitimate fighters. I think that's a problem with those who are involved in the fighting because we had ample time to be able to say, okay, we have infiltrators, and this is propaganda, by the way, because talking about evidence, there's really no evidence to say that, okay, to substantiate and prove for sure that, okay, the atrocities committed by this particular group of persons is either the Atangaji boys or Amber boys themselves. So we'll go by word of mouth to say, okay, now, there's always precedence and there's always a causality. When we say, okay, like I always give an example of Boya doing a mountain race where they said, okay, nobody should go out of the road during that day. And people go out and there are explosives that are planted, whether by the boys or by like public. By the end of the day, it happens that it explodes and people are injured. Now we can come and say, okay, it was the Antangaji boys or it was the Amber boys. But when it happened at the time when there was a warning that said, don't go out to do this thing, and there is an outcome like that, how do we come and say, okay, it is not related to the Amber boys, it is the Antangaji boys that did it? I think there should be a system. Now, as we are talking about us resisting, showing identification to the government or the forces, the police forces, Amazonia, we should be able to say, okay, you coming as a fighter should have something that identifies you as a fighter. We don't have that. And so we keep talking about infiltration. How do we solve that problem so that the people can be at least comfortable to know that this action was done by an actual Amber fighter or by a criminal who is pretending to be an Amber fighter? So what is the organization that is in charge of this fighting doing to solve this problem of this infiltration and double identity that we cannot on our own as citizens be able to differentiate?
Do not forget the AGovC actually formed the anti kidnapping. How do I put it? In short, we put in place the policies to stop kidnapping by appointing an anti-kidnapping czar, so that they put an end to this molestation of our people. And so there is nothing much we can do about it. As I said, we are in a war. There will be excesses, but we try to curb them. And if we are unable to completely stop it altogether, all we can only do is call the attention of the international community to intervene as early as possible. As long as they cannot do that, we cannot take responsibility. Our soldiers are guerrilla fighters, and there's no way we are going to say they identify themselves. In a conflict like this one, you cannot identify them for sure. And
okay,
as I said, they are guerrilla fighters.
Okay, looking at the fact that
we're not fighting a conventional war.
Wait, true. Okay, and it's understandable because to claim territory, you have to act like that. Okay, look at the condition or the situation where we have about 50 different militias in Amazonia fighting for the same cause, different leaders, sometimes disagreeing, not agreeing on certain matters. Don't you think that it affects the conflict negatively? I mean, when we talk about the international organization coming in and having a say, even if they say we call a dialogue now or we call a negotiation now, who represent? I mean, because those who are, we talk about the government, the out of Cameroon, they cannot really say for sure those who are fighting what they are facing. So if it comes to a negotiation and say, okay, we want to call people to come, look at these 50 militias, and from past events where we've seen them disagreeing on matters, some people say, okay, we have 2 weeks lockdown. So one person come and say 1 week, some will say it starts on this 15th, some will say no, it starts on the 20th, and this back and forth kind of, you see even one faction attacking another faction. So I'm asking myself now, even within the internal struggles, are we saying that it is still the part of the invitation, or is that the persons are not well organized enough to have a specific and unique agenda?
And to add more flesh to that question, it takes us to what I had prepared for this as well. We have the AGovC or the ADF. It's being regarded as the defiant one in the midst of all these militias, because they always try as much as possible to stand on their own and not collaborate, as a lot of people say. Some weeks back, we had this movement for collaboration, and it was hailed by Sisiko Ayuk Tabe. Some people still recognize him as the face of the liberation, or the face of this fight for restoration of independence. And he hailed this movement of collaboration between various leaders. We had the IG, the IGK, or whatever they now call it. The IG has split into so many IGs, we don't know who is who. But there was this collaboration. We had John Bakuro there as well. We had Sokadef. Sokadef is another force on the ground. Now, when the ADF stands on its own, does not collaborate with all these other parties, and some party is collaborating and the ADF is not collaborating, the ADF goes ahead and puts in place the policy of taking taxes. These other people who have collaborated, or the other militia, do not recognize the ADF's position to collect taxes. And if they are to come up with their own means of getting money, they come up with their own means of getting money, come up with their own taxes. So it means the ADF takes its own taxes, the SOCADEF takes its own taxes, ARF takes its own taxes, and what have you, all the other militias take their own taxes. At the end of the day, the people find themselves in a situation where within a month they encounter several different forces and pay several amounts.
Now, I begin with his question. Our situation, the disunity is not unique to Ambazonia alone. In other liberation struggle, you've always seen that people with different ideologies but pursuing the same independence cause have been involved. And so our own is not unique. There's going to be the disparity about our approach to the same goal, and we try as much as possible to find a common ground how to work. To say that the ADF or the AGovC ADF do not collaborate with other organizations is false. The AGovC have initiated collaboration with other movements within this liberation struggle far more than any other organization. Now, Dr. Cho once said he has reached out to Ayok Tabe, he has reached out to, physical visit. Ayok Tabe, Sako, Akwanga, and all the other leaders that you may mention them, a good number of them. And when we're talking about parties that are involved in this conflict, we are talking about consequential parties. And so we don't go around looking for people who have nothing to offer and you expect us to be rushing behind them to beg them for collaboration. No, we find the consequential parties and we try to reach out to them, create collaboration. And as I said, we've reached out to organizations far more than they've reached out to us for collaboration. And so if for certain reasons there are certain collaboration meeting organized somewhere like the one you just projected here and the AGovC didn't attend, of course they reach out. And for some reason or the other, if we see that there is nothing to come out of it, there is no need to attending, we have a lot in hand.
You talk about being consequential. It's like saying the SOCADEF is inconsequential. The IG
I didn't say so. I didn't mention anyone. I said there are inconsequential parties, and I didn't mention the SOCADEF as an inconsequential party. Again, that brings me again to the issue of disunity. And so, if they want to talk to us, no, that's the propaganda of Cameroon. They've always tried to say we do not know who to talk to because there are so many of them. Even in the liberation struggle of Cameroon Republic, it was not only one party. There were various factions. And the West exactly know who to talk to. And so our case is also not different. When Cameroon actually penned its signature for the talks in Canada, we came together, were we not? So there's no disunity. We may have different approach to the same goal. And we may just, disagree in certain things. But the goal of gaining Ambazonia will remain the same people with the same objective. And so anytime Cameroon is prepared, Ambazonian stakeholders are there to negotiate the way out of this war.
We still think that collaboration being shown to the people will go a long way to make your case very much appealing if you can show that we have a common goal, we have a common objective, and this is us working together for that common goal. Being disunited in the fight, especially there at the top, means that going down to the grassroots, that disunity is going to be projected right down there.
Come again.
Yeah, I was saying that the collaboration, I think, is very necessary if you want to put your case or you want to push for your case, so that the people that you claim to be fighting for actually understand that these are the people we are looking up to as leaders.
We are not claiming to be fighting for. Point of correction, we are not claiming to be fighting for some people. We are defending a people that war has been declared upon them. We must be mindful of our utterances and give us the right name rather than trying to give us the bad name for the terrorists to continue going around to kill our people on those grounds. We do not claim. We are actually defending the territory and the people of Ambazonia that Cameroon declared war on, And when in 2017, when people marched out in Boya, how many were killed? How many forces were on the ground at that time when they killed people in Boya?
Okay,
we came in before it stopped.
I've talked with a couple of friends after this. Kwakwa has a question. I've talked with a couple of friends and people who, to a certain extent, understand the stake on the ground, understand things, what's happening on the ground, and a lot of them always point fingers at the ADF. Why do you think that the ADF is the person who has the bad name? Is it just disdain for the ADF? Is it just
because it is a no blinking force?
Jealousy.
It is the no blinking force. You tried saying that we were. I thought you were actually trying to say we were those hardliners. That I'm going to agree to it. We are the hardliners, and so we are no blinking force. And so people may not like it, but our goal is to achieve something better for Amazonia.
So Kwakwa had a question.
Okay, looking at this issue of division, I mean, when you go back to history, you realize that our politicians, the Fonchas, the Munas, the Indelis, were not united. They had different views on their approach in relation to independence, autonomy, self-rule, or unification with La Republic, and they were all divided. And that transcended down to the people, even in their plebiscite vote, and over the years. I think where we are today is an effect of the fact that our politicians don't have one voice. If they had one voice, probably would have had a different outcome. Now, looking at the situation where you talk about other crises, other wars, other conflicts, and having the same characteristic of division that we are facing in our own conflict, and then looking at the history where the individuals who were in charge of deciding for us as politicians were divided. And that has linked us to this point where we are fighting because of the consequences of their decisions. Now, don't you think that copying from other places doesn't necessarily mean that us will succeed because they are succeeded?
Again, the question is
so looking at the division, looking at the fact that our politicians were divided, and this is where we are. When you say other places, they were also divided, they had having one common goal. Does it mean that because they were divided and we're also divided, does it mean that indirectly or directly we will also succeed like they succeeded?
Our liberation struggle is guaranteed that it is going to succeed. I stated here that it is just a question of time, and that time is on our side. And so it is not trying to say, oh, because they were, I'm just trying to clear you a situation where I'm saying that it is not unique in our case. It's not a good thing, but it's not unique in our case. It's something that has happened in others, yet they still made it. And so we are confident that we are going to reach there. And as I told you, when Paul Biya penned down its signature, ready for talks in Canada, our people, our leaders came together, the consequential one again.
Could it be that you are downplaying the far-reaching effects of this whole conflict? I mean, you say it is guaranteed. What gives us that guarantee? Because when we started in 2015 or 2016, this conflict, I don't think people could look into a future and envision a time when in 2025 we'll see the crisis. But 9 years going, and we can talk about 30 years. So
we are not.
What gives us a guarantee?
We are not. There are organizations that went out there telling our people that the road to independence was going to last 7 months. That was the organization they called, what do they call it? The organization of Bohebet, what's it called again? Maurice.
Maurice.
Yeah. When we met down in Nigeria, Maurice presented their way to independence. And I was representing the AGovC ADF there. And they were trying to find the easy way to get into independence. We're going to take this step, we're going to take this step, we're going to take this step. Within 7 months, we'll be at independence, elect a prime minister, and things like that. I denied it was not going to work. And that they must accept the right to self-defense using every means necessary, including carrying weapons. Now, when we left, they formed their government and told our people that independence will be achieved in 7 to 9 months. The leader of the AGovC went out there to say it is not going to be a walk in the park and told our people to be ready. It is going to be a very long walk. And so someone should not go out there and think that if we achieve independence within 10 years, that's fine. but our people should be prepared that it may be longer than that. And so we don't go out trying to downplay the minds of our people to say this thing will be achieved within this time frame, and within that time frame is not achieved, and then they begin feeling like, oh, we misled them into something. With the AGovC and its leadership made it very clear, it is not going to be an easy walk to freedom. And we see things so.
Yeah, it still brings us to the aspect of collaboration, where we can say that if the AGovC thinks that the military option is the best option, and say the IG thinks that it's diplomacy that will work, I think we still converge at a certain point where the AGovC can prosecute the military front, and they say IG prosecutes the diplomacy front. Like the charter has it, the charter of the AGovC has it in page 4 of the introduction, saying that its implementation should reflect the values of respect for the rule of law, democracy, equality, transparency, collaboration, determination, innovation, and hard work that will characterize a prosperous and sovereign Amazonian country. I think when you present the charter and somebody goes through the charter, because I read a little bit about it, you see that maybe there's a very good vision. They put it in very enticing words, use very enticing words, but that's not what we are experiencing. We're not experiencing the collaboration. We're not seeing the people working together to achieve the common goal. We're not seeing the effort being made to secure the lives of the civilians as it should be.
Again, I think I already passed through this topic when I told you that the AGovC have reached out to other organizations for collaboration more than any other organization in the entire struggle. So I don't know if you took note of this, or you simply want to bring the same question again around. Dr. Cho Ayaba met Siseko Ayuktabe, moved and met Siseko Ayuktabe in Nigeria. He has moved from here to the United States to meet Sako and the Chris Anu and the Bohebet and the Akwanga. How many of them have ever come to Norway to meet Dr. Cho Ayaba for a meeting?
Now, since we're talking about Dr. Cho Ayaba, let's go a little bit into Dr. Cho Ayaba. We know that he's been arrested. He's still in detention. We know that you paid him a visit in detention, and he has released a couple of letters to the people, to the forces. What's the situation like right now with Dr. Cho Ayaba?
Dr. Cho Ayaba is still not being indicted. The Norwegian authorities are still holding him under detention for flimsy excuses that he incited crimes against humanity down in the territory. And so, according to their laws, which is also a kind of a civil law, the police can keep someone in detention for as long as the one pending their investigation. But we'll begin to question until when. He's been there for 6 months. They've not been able to bring charges against him in the court of law.
Maybe that's to say that they have very strong things against him, a strong case against him. That's why they can't offer him bail, and they think that he's going to be a threat if they should offer him bail, and he shouldn't be out there.
Well, so far what they've said is that there's a risk of flight, and so there's never been the issue of because the crimes are some serious crime that they think they should hold him behind bars. So far what they've released is that there's a threat of flight.
I think Kwakwa had a question. If
okay, just to ask. So when we look at the situation, because we're talking about things to come in the future, and maybe we can forecast and say, okay, that there are potentials that will come in place, and then these are how things can be. Now, when we look at, I want to bring in Field Marshal. Some time ago, they went to Lebi Alem, if I'm not mistaken, and they killed the traditional leaders there, and we used to see him on social media putting on the regalia of a king or a fawn in that area. And I'm asking myself, this is somebody who was probably nobody in that village, but as a result of the war, gained the grounds, the power, and in a way enthroned himself as a king. Now, what are you guys doing to make, because nothing was done to change what he did, like, okay, becoming the paramount ruler of that area, killing all the chiefs in that place. So what is being done to make sure that as this crisis progresses, and even in the event that you guys were giving independence, not only use the word you guys were giving independence, what's to safeguard the people from such fate? Why I bring this up? Because you have been quoting from other crises. I'll take you back to Sierra Leone and Liberia. After the wars in those countries, and those young people were fighting, were taken into the society, they kept their guns in the bushes and they dug ground and they buried it. But in the communities, if you anger them, they go back to the bush, dig up their guns, come back and deal with you. Now, look at what has been happening in the case of Field Marshal, that he has enthroned himself as a king only of late. But there are people also in other areas who are like they are kings of their own kingdoms, controlling without any challenge. We are journeying towards independence. When we are giving independence, how are we going to make sure these people become civilians or at least rule with law? Because now it is some sort of lawlessness.
Or accountability is ensured.
Yes, within the AGovC, we have within the ADF, there's the conduct of the code of conduct that soldiers of the ADF they pen their signature to, which means they're going to behave themselves at the war front according to those standards that match with a standard laid out at the Geneva Convention. Now, when I'm not a fan of Field Marshal, who goes around and declares himself the king of Libya. If he declared himself the king of Libya, Amazonians know exactly what to deal with, how to deal with such situations. Now, unfortunately, he's of late, and Libya has fallen back in the hands of the enemy. Again, as I said, within the ADF, we have the code of conduct that we try to lecture our soldiers on their behavior on the war front. You don't go around terrorizing the civilians. You don't go around becoming the kind of a warlord that Field Marshal made himself. But again, as I said, there are excesses of soldiers during a war. And so we may not be able to control some of them, but we try as much as we can. In the issue of on the wake of independence, of course, the AGovC also have policy in place how to retract guns from the society. When we'll be approaching there, we'll be making some of them policy of the country, possibly on how to recover guns from people who are in the bushes.
Is there going to be any accountability when all this comes to an end, where we can see some?
Oh yes, we within the AGovC have said it is definitely not be a peace and reconciliation community as in South Africa after apartheid. There's going to be a court where people will answer questions of their action during the war itself.
So what we're saying, you spoke about the code of conduct. I mean, look at the crisis. We've been into the crisis 9 years now. I don't think I've ever seen a situation, maybe it has happened, it's a maybe, that somebody behaved out of conduct and probably was brought to book or was punished or was penalized for misconduct. I don't know if there's ever been a situation like that.
There are quite a number of them that I may not go start enumerating them, but I remember when Florence Ayafo was brutally killed, the ADF went and picked up the soldiers that did that. Okay. There are those reports on social media.
That's reassuring that at least in a way there is accountability, and there's some persons who are maybe, which is good. At least with that, I'm hopeful that those who misbehave, like Victor was saying,
even within Mezam, there was also the killing of some soldiers of Bafut United that were killed by the ADF. Of course, we also picked up those boys within the ADF and sanctioned them.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Okay. We don't have very long again to continue with this. Maybe in about 15 minutes we'll be running up. But let's let's talk a little bit about, if not independence, what's the alternative? Is there an alternative? Is the AGovC looking at, what if we do not get independence? What can we settle for when we go into the negotiations? What can we, what are going to be the concessions? Can we settle on a federation, a two-state federation? I know on this program we had a debate. Proposals came from Ngabu and from Kwakwa. Ngabu had a proposal of, I think it was a three-state federation, where you have the Northwest as one state, the Southwest as another state, and then French Cameroun as another state. I'm not sure. Ngabu, Kwakwa had his own proposal of, was it a two-state federation? I'm not sure. Ngabu, Kwakwa, what was your suggestion? Or
Yeah, it was more of a two-state.
A two-state federation.
Mhm.
And then I had as a suggestion this: if not independence, how can we still settle for something the people are going to be okay with? I said, okay, let's dissolve the two languages, the English and French, and take, say, Lamso as the national language, move the capital from Yaoundé to the West region, institute, say, Bamenda as the economic capital, so Limbe as the economic capital, and give all these other places, say the far north, a textile industry, a huge textile industry, operate a ultra modern trainway from the north to the south, have the south as a processing unit, and the south and the east as a processing unit for timber and all that. And then in the northwest, or in Bamenda, we have it as the agricultural hub. And yeah, so the textile industry in the north and all that. If we should settle at that, don't you think that it's going to be something which will be appealing?
The AGovC ADF is not going to settle for anything less than independence. We are not going to appease Cameroon by trying to find a middle ground by legalizing illegality. In the union that failed, Cameroon walked out of that union and annexed Ambazonia. And we are fighting our way out of that annexation. There will be no compromise on the issue of the sovereignty of the people of Ambazonia.
So what are the terms we are going to be negotiating when we go into negotiations?
There is in place what we had put before since in the days of the SCNC, the Boya Peace Initiative, on process of parting ways, but also allowing Cameroon to enjoy some of those resources within our territory. Of course, if we are breaking up today, we will still need the airports of Cameroon to land there and probably move to our own territory. We are still going to, there are things that we are still going to share with them, and that is contained in the Boya Peace Initiative on how to part ways amicably.
Okay. Okay, now let's move on from there. We talked a little bit about the arrest of Dr. Cho Ayaba, and we have seen several indictments. We know that even in the United States, a member of the AGovC was also interrogated, and the case is still pending. We're not very sure yet. We know that somebody like Eric Tato was indicted by the US government because of his involvement in this. They call him the Gary Master. And we know that back there in La République du Cameroun, we have the imprisonment or the sentencing of Abdul Karim Ali, who was a peace crusader and who has been strongly advocating for Southern Cameroons. We have his wife in a public statement saying she's going to stand strong with the husband. But we have all these arrests, just to say we have all these arrests. And don't you think that we are losing the war? If all of these people are being arrested, we still have in incarceration Ayuk Tabe and his entire team, they are still in detention. All of these arrests, isn't it an indication that we are losing the war?
Our pledge to this war has been that even if I'm the last man standing, I will fight this war to an end. The only way Cameroon can occupy Ambazonia forever is when they kill all Ambazonians. Now, the liberation, the freedom and sovereignty of Ambazonia is an ideology. They may kill us today. The next generation is still going to pick it from where we left it. And so there'll be no question of compromising those positions because some leaders have been arrested, which I describe as intimidation, so that they give way to normalcy to return. Don't forget, the West are simply collaborating with Cameroon because they see Cameroon as their farm where they go to harvest. And the greater part of these resources are coming from Ambazonia. And so they want to maintain the status quo by helping Cameroon to arrest its leader out of this country. In which situation have you seen where in the ongoing conflict, the aggressor is not arrested, but those defending themselves are the ones that are being arrested? For what reason? Have they been indicted? No. It's just because they want to create the situation of normalcy. And we're not blinking about it. Even if Dr. Cho is not there today, other Dr. Chos are going to emerge.
So how do you indict a leader of a country who by law, international law, is a sovereign state and has the unique responsibility of defending his territory from whatever enemies he deems as not in support or promoting national security?
The international community should be able to mount pressure on Cameroon to come to the negotiating table. The guy of Israel, Netanyahu, right?
Yes.
He's awaiting arrest. He's a sitting leader.
Yeah, we had
so why
that
is it
here.
different in the situation of Cameroon?
The question would be, who can enforce the arrest? Because the person issuing the arrest cannot necessarily just go in the country and pick him up. They'll have to wait for him to go somewhere out of his country.
Of course, yes. Of course, yes. Has Paul Biya been traveling? Has Paul Biya been traveling? Yes. Why can Paul Biya not be arrested?
We'll say the situations, this is crisis.
Atanganji is just coming back from Italy. He's one of those forces within the Cameroon government that are causing the atrocities within Ambazonia. He entered Italy. Why was he not arrested?
Now, the difference would be this. The Palestinians are actually crying out. Are Ambazonians, in terms of the civilians, crying out for the international community to come to their aid?
Our people cried. Our people cried, went to the street. There was helicopter gunship. What did the international community do? Don't forget, it is not because we are not crying. Do not follow what the social media is probably doing and try to follow them behind. Our people have been crying, and international community human rights reports have indicated that Cameroon's conflict with Ambazonia is one of the most neglected conflicts in the world.
Yeah.
So they don't bring it to social media for you to listen.
When you bring Israel and Palestine, these are two different nations. But internationally speaking, Cameroon is one nation. An individual will put it like the head of state will put it.
That is the illegality that at the beginning I said. That is the illegality that I said at the beginning. Cameroon and Ambazonia is not one nation. Do you have any proof that they are one nation?
We don't have. It's a matter of proof. The world knows, internationally speaking, that is one nation.
No, it is illegality. It is illegality that we must make the international community to know. When we met in 1961, Cameroon was already an independent country. And so you cannot now declare it an indivisible Cameroon. It is not. We Ambazonia must not be the one trying to sell that ideology, because we have never been. When they were independent in 1960, we were still a colony under the British.
True.
With self-governance.
What you're saying is true. But also history will tell us that there have been
so how did you move from this position now to say it is one country?
Well,
it is a breach of the law. Cameroon breached the law that brought us together as two equal parties to form a federal state. Cameroon breached that law in 1972 when they instituted the United Republic of Cameroon. Paul Biya breached the law of 1972 again by, through a presidential decree, returned the country to La République du Cameroun. That's illegality.
Oh,
that's breaching the law and occupying another territory and declaring now that, oh, the international community knows that it is one. No, the international community are shocked also to know that we were never one and we simply came together as Njumba.
Well, what you are saying is another way of looking at it. Now, we want to talk about the unification. It was a time, like I said, the politicians of West Cameroon were so divided that they had no single opinion about the future of that territory. And so there's a vote for unification or for autonomy, and the vote for unification wins. And the two territories become a federated state, West Cameroon and East Cameroon, like that. It journeys from there. The question would be, what did the politicians of West Cameroon do at that time to make sure that whatever laws that were not followed or respected were put in place or were respected the way they're supposed to be respected? Because it did not happen today. We're talking about 1972, we're in 2025. That's almost 50 years ago. So we cannot come now and say, okay, these two territories are no. There's something as precedent. So if there's precedent that these two territories have existed as one, whether there's a law written, we can go to court and argue that, okay, since you guys were okay in that situation, it means you accepted the conditions that came as a result of that situation. So why do we come now and say, okay, because it was never legal, it means that we're not together or we're not one?
Where was that documented?
I say it's
talking about two states. We're talking about two states, and you're talking about some verbal discussion that they had in Fuman. Now, what people were being used.
Is there a document to prove that
Cameroun were being used and put in a union against their will? This generation has refused to continue maintaining that status quo. That's why we say we are going to use every means necessary to put an end to that annexation.
So you ask of a document of evidence. Can we also say, is there a document or evidence that proves that, okay, these two territories are separate? Because basically it's all talk.
The history is there out there for you to read. We do not need a document. He's saying there's a one nation. He's saying there's a one nation history. Historical facts are there that they are not. When the British were granting independence to Ambazonia, or Southern Cameroon, if you prefer to call that, Cameroon had already been independent. That's a historical fact that you should have, as reason that it is not one nation.
True.
Senegal and Gambia did the same thing. Are they one nation? No.
Historically speaking, the independence of British Southern Cameroon was given on the condition of reunification. So it's not like they gave the independence and they voted to be one with La Republic. Now, we were talking about history. History is written by the victors. So there are different points of views and areas where you can stand and look at this history. From your point of view, you have your facts. Someone person looking at it from the point of view of La Republic has their facts. Now, we should tell somebody who wants to look at it from a neutral background to say, okay, there is this that we can look at this particular point in time and say, okay, this territory should be independent and is independent and separate from La Republic. We're talking about the international community coming in. Is there a document to prove that, okay, this territory like this and this territory are not united based on the fact that we have been together for more than 50 years?
I think there's rather not a document to show that these two territories are together. There's no union treaty.
Sure. How can you come to say that you bring a document to prove that these two nations are not together? It is your place to prove that they are together by showing us the union and a contract. Because as I said, there were two people.
The only document
had independence at two different times.
The only document that can show that these countries are together are the document that shows that they are two separate states that came together. And according
to historical fact out there as a proof.
Yes, which says that the form of the state was never ever going to be changed.
That's what I've been talking about, illegality
or whatever. That everything about it, anything happening to it, is just illegal, and anybody doing anything which is not acceptable, because you cannot agree with somebody. You go, you sign something, and the next time you just change it on your own with a presidential decree.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're rounding up.
Or whatever.
We're rounding up, but before we round up and have our concluding statements, we'd like to introduce you to our sponsor for today, which is the brand Footprints. And this is a clip of their advert.
Did you know that based on statistics, a staggering 90% of young people within the ages of 16 and 40 live happier lives when they do not set goals? Of course you didn't. And that, my friend, is cause it's a lie. Now hold up. Before you swipe away, hear me out. Isn't it obvious that without even the indictment of statistics, individuals find great fulfillment in actually setting goals and achieving them? Of course. And that's why we recommend footprint wears, as it serves as a motivating factor and a daily reminder that within our short stay in this world, let's strive as much as possible to be impactful. And it starts with setting those goals. There's nothing as beautiful as looking back and being proud of what we've been able to accomplish. Absolutely nothing. So, my friend, do get for yourself a footprint apparel today. Go! I'm out.
Footprints is proudly brought to you by MVA Clothing. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this discussion. And as I said before the advert, we are rounding up, and I'll just want to have single statements from our panelists, our guests, before we let our guests go, and we might continue this on a later episode. On a very lighter note, I mean, the principal question was, who is winning the war? From your perspective and from what you've explained, it seems that Ambazonia is winning the war, or you present it as Ambazonia is winning the war. But I'd like to deviate a little bit from there, and as on a very lighter note, is there anything being done by La République du Cameroun that you think is proper? That is there anything that interests you in La République du Cameroun that you think, oh no, we are, because of this particular aspect, I still see these people as brothers, and maybe we can live together? Is there any?
No. No. From my time that I was growing up as a child, my father told me, you know, for you to work in Cameroon, you must be able to speak French. And I grew up, started learning French, just because I thought I'll be able to, or I'll be opportune to work in Cameroon. And it is the only condition to work in Cameroon. Why, for whatever reason, should I have interest in a territory where they condition me, that they say two people came together to form a union, two equal partners, and that I'll be obligated to be able to speak French, to be able to gain appointment into state position. So these are some of the things that from childhood, I already started seeing the difficulties of proudly saying, I'm a Cameroonian. And as I said, by 1993, I was already start thinking of those opinions of why didn't we just gain our own independence, and these people, they gain their own and we go our way. By the time it was 2002, that was when I penned my signature that I'm going to be part of the defiance against the annexation of Ambazonia. And there is nothing I cherish in Cameroon. When I go down to the territory, I mostly stay within Ambazonia and simply pass through the Douala airport. I've never slept a night in Douala, and I won't.
So you can't pick out a single thing that you like about.
There is nothing I like about Cameroon that I do not have within Ambazonia. There is nothing.
Okay, now
is there one thing?
Is there one thing you can pick? Is there one thing that you can tell us not being done proper in this fight for independence or for restoration of independence? one thing that is not being done proper?
I've said our fighters have their excesses, and these are things that we are unable to control, but we should look at the bigger picture, which is the liberation of our people. And it is going to, of course, bring them to a better future where children are going to grow up, be able to have access to resources within their own territory, to bring up their own children, educate them their own way, and not in a territory where French is being imposed in a court for you, not in a country where a Francophone teacher comes to teach geography to English-speaking students. This is something that I do not wish to happen to the next generation.
Thank you very much, Sir Nkem Njinkeng, for your presence, for taking our time to talk with us, to debate with us, to interact with us. And we hope that we continue these discussions, these very difficult discussions and these very difficult debates to foster democracy in our country or in the area we intend to have as a country. And Sir Kwakwa, let me get your concluding statement and your take on who's winning the war.
I want to first of all thank Mr. Njinkeng for being part of this our discussions. It's the first time we're having a visitor like this, and I think it was good to have another perspective about this whole crisis. And I like your insight. Not to worry, the questions we ask is just to create awareness out there, and you have answered them in a manner that I think everybody who has doubts will know that okay, this is how things are done down there. There is hope. I always say that there is hope, and the claim we have and the fight we are having is a legitimate one. And if it takes long, then it takes long. If it happens sooner than we expect, then fine for us. And we should not relent in the only two way, either by forums like this to talk and to challenge ourselves and each other, those out there to be able to come and join in the only two way, either by talking or by partaking. So as to who is winning the war, I can't really say for sure, like in terms of the data, because we don't have, like you have said, Victor, over the data is not actual. But for me, so long as our territories where the government of the Republic doesn't have control, it simply means that if you reverse the time and you go to 2012, they had control of those areas. And if we're in 2025 and they cannot control some areas, it means that at least in a way, we have also gained, in the crisis, gained some territories that we can say, okay, we have advanced in a way, which means to me, my book starts winning. So it might be slow, progressively, but if you give it 10 years, look at where we are, and compared to where we were in 2016, and then you can say, okay, from this we can project that in 2030, this is where we're going to be. So in a way, it is slow, but I think Ambazonia has proven to the world and to the government that they had not to crack. And so in a way, they challenged the government. So that's, for me, is winning.
Okay. Sangabo, your concluding statement and who's winning the war, and then we'll go to Sir Dumbo.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, Mr. Victor, and I really appreciate the guest putting out time to talk to us today. As to who is winning the war, the only thing to me that I can say that Amazonia is winning the war is when they take and control territories. And I haven't seen anyone, so I cannot say for sure that they are really winning the war. I know something can be done if they put more fire. Maybe they can do that. But as of now, I cannot say for sure that they are really winning because I haven't seen any territory that they totally control where they can do anything that they like in that territory. And if that is not done, if you don't have a complete place that you have 100% control over, then there is no way to say that you have made a step. I know there is still work in progress, but I think a lot of things needs to be done on their side if they have to move towards the right direction. And also to our guest, I want to go back to the fact that he says the excesses of the fighters. I think that is something that he has come out very clearly to say, which I appreciate. And to say that it is impossible to control means you don't have powers over the fighters, which is dangerous. If there are excesses, I think you as the leaders or the leaders have to do something about it if the fight has to go the right way. If not, it is going to be catastrophic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Over.
Thank you. Sir Dumbo, you've been with us, you've been listening. Do you have a concluding statement and your take on who's winning the war?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Are you getting me?
Yeah, 5 on 5.
All right. My take on who is winning the war, it's simple. I think wars are being won by territory acquisition and total control. And from what I have seen now, there isn't a single place that is in total control of the Amazonian fighters or the separatist fighters. In most places, it's dual control. So they can't say they've taken over any territory. And then my concluding statement is that I want to appreciate the leader who came on the program, Truth Talks. Thank you so much for at least accepting the invitation and to be here to talk with youths and young people. So my take on it is that I know that if we use the measuring rod of the Europeans, every project has a timeline. And giving a timeline doesn't make you weak if you don't fulfill that timeline. But when you don't give a timeline, when you don't have a timeline, then you have that temptation of not working. You have that temptation of not putting forth strategies. You have that temptation of not even having a vision. So when they say that, when they say that, okay, they were not part of those who started and tell people to go back, that the people that will have independence in 7 months. It's not like the people who said 7 months wished for 9 years. But they were, for me, I always applaud them because they had a timeline and they were working towards it and doing everything in it. So, but if the Amazonian Governing Council is telling us that they don't have a timeline, that means we should just be ready to die. All of us should be ready to die for the cause. I think it's high time they set a timeline because every project, the life of every project is time.
Yeah.
If you can give it time, it doesn't mean that the time is written on stone, but with time, it gives you the ability, it makes all the faculties in your mind to start working to see how you can put forth strategies, how you can put forth techniques to see how you can meet up with that timeline or at most extend a bit. But without a timeline, then this thing is a fallacy, definitely, for me.
Thank you very much for that different point of view. It's a very interesting one. And I think that the leaders are listening. I think it's a point they should pick and should reflect over. I'll conclude by saying who's winning the war. I'm not sure who is winning the war, but I know the civilians are losing. And I know that for a fact they are losing. And maybe they are losing for a better tomorrow, for a greater good. But I know for now the civilians are losing. And this is also an invitation to proponents of one and indivisible Cameroon, people who think that the way we should go about this is maybe through a federation, through a unitary state, or people who think that French should dominate the English part of Cameroon. Everybody, every idea is welcome on this platform so that we debate, we get to understand your perspective, where you're coming from, and if we can find a common ground at a certain point. Again, I want to thank Nkem Njinkeng for representing or standing here as the Chief of Staff of the AGovC and answering our questions and going through the heat. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, it's bye-bye from Truth Talk.
Thank you for having me on the program, and I want to encourage all Ambazonians to follow your Truth Talk and be educated about beside other issues that you carry on your platform, that they are being able to gain some knowledge through listening to Truth Talk. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye.